Thank you so much. So I'm Franziska Dolak. I'm Innovation Manager for Siemens Smart Infrastructure.
Okay.
And at that, we're trying to humanize technology by changing how people interact with buildings. So I think there are several disruptors in our industry. One is definitely the different expectations of end users. So we're dealing with multiple disciplines in terms of when we look at stakeholders. Obviously also when we look at building types, right, that brings a certain complexity, but there's different stakeholders in and around a building, right? It's kind of the tenant, the person that's using it each and every day for work, for example, to live, whatever you do. You have facility management, you have the building owner and investors. So I think it's quite a complex ecosystem, and what we definitely see on the end user side, so on the tenant side, is people have a lot higher expectations. And there's actually, especially in smart buildings around the globe, there's many people that feel like a slave towards technology, which is obviously the worst possible outcome. I think another thing is that we also see very different competitors entering the market. So looking at co-working spaces, for example, where also once again the expectation level on well-being and comfort and having everything you need in order to do your job is drastically changing. And I think the third major disruptor I see is, despite all the new technological developments we're talking about, take IoT, take cloud, whatever it is, we're still dealing with buildings where there's a huge installed base, right? Where you have systems in there that have been there for 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50 years, right? So how to connect, how to integrate, and how to take it further to adhere to regulatory standards in terms of sustainability, for example, but really take the most out of it so you're actually creating valuable experiences for your customers. I think there's a couple of takeaways. I think one which I very much liked, and I think beforehand I wasn't able to put my finger really so much on it, is really kind of the makeup or DNA of an entrepreneur, right, in terms of stamina and also having a certain amount of naivete, and actually really focusing on the people that are closest to the customer compared to the ones that are maybe closest to the product. I think that for me was very interesting. I had gained a lot of insights on customer-centric approaches, right? I think obviously everyone agrees, yes, customer centricity is the key, but the question is obviously how you go about it. And I think there was great examples, for example, from Lego, of how they're really crowdsourcing ideas and then bringing it into production, from also really other B2B players in pharmaceuticals and insurance and so on, and really looking and understanding how do they actually manage this process, and especially then the mindset behind it. And I think that brings me to my third insight, which is culture. And I don't think there has ever been a question about the importance of culture, but I think what was most interesting to me is that there seems to be a paradox in innovative cultures, right? There's the things we all want, but then the things that we are maybe reluctant to go after in order to really make it happen. I mean, maybe just to give an example, right? We all talk about there should be a high tolerance for making mistakes or for failure in a way, but if we want that, it also means we need to have a clear intolerance for incompetence. The same goes with flat hierarchies, right? I mean, that was all the talk, but that still means you need very strong leadership, and the same goes for experimentation. Yes, let's try it out, let's test it out, let's be fast with it and validate, but you have to do that in an extremely disciplined manner. And I think really managing that ambidexterity is something that is commonly undervalued. But I think probably one of the most recent failures that I went through is we, like last year, we moved into a totally new building. So we created a whole new headquarters, international headquarters for our organization. And as part of that, I was a project lead to create an innovation space. So really create a space for teams to experiment, to exchange, come together, grow together, drive skill building, but really also create the future and visualize and prototype customer experience early. And so I've gotten the task and I was like, wow, fantastic. I have a lot of knowledge on that. I think that this is going to be an easy ride in a way, right? And obviously we had to get top management buy-in, right? Obviously they had signed off that yes, we're going to do it. And we worked with the organization of really understanding those teams that are really exploring the future and creating it. What are their needs? Because they're quite different to when you're working in execution. And so we made that. We identified what should be the objectives of the space and the use cases we actually want to realize, and what would it cost us. And with that I went into the top management team, which by then I hadn't been in before, so I had hardly any idea what are they usually talking about, kind of what's the tone in there. And I came in there as like fully convinced, I mean, this is going to be, like I said, an easy ride, it's going to be a winner. And I totally slammed the wall. Like full blown right into the wall. People didn't understand what is that and had a totally different expectation. And I think there the learning was for me of communication, right? Anchoring it better in what they're talking about and helping them solve their challenges and fears that they're having around this topic of really understanding what is it really that our innovators need, but also making it tangible. Because with those words like innovation space, it's just another buzzword, is IoT, big data, AI. And when you talk about that, everyone has a different picture in their mind, and that's actually what happened in that space, right? And I think probably someone had a feeling that I would send them to Mars, which obviously wasn't the goal, but really learning from that of how can I really actively involve them in the journey and not only get the buy-in in terms of the money, but really help us as an organization grow with that in our understanding also around an innovative culture and what we want to do with that. So I think it was a very healthy experience. I think definitely one is be authentic and be vulnerable, because I think it's all about people. I mean, it's in the end, it's about a people relationship. And I think the more true you can be with yourself, the more true you'll be with other people around you. And I think that will also then translate into long-lasting success, even though maybe the first idea you start with that you collaborate on is not the one, but I think you probably might see that you come back to those exact same people because there's really a value in that. And I think the second is, and that's a personal thing, and I mean it depends also a little bit on your own courage maybe, but I just tend to ask for forgiveness later than ask for permission. And that's just something, I mean obviously you have to manage the risk, right? If that's a decision that's going to bring your company into the tomb or the graveyard, maybe not, but I think one initially already has a good feeling around that, but sometimes it's just easier, just try it out, do it, let people experience it, iterate from there. And then I think it's a lot easier also getting the buy-in and the funding, time, resources, whatever you need to actually make it happen. So I think sometimes it's just about actually doing what we often preach to others, right? Experiment, test, and validate. Just do it, right? Let's stop talking and get into action.